I'm back with another queer discussion. Now today I want to talk about specifically in regards to Disney and how, while we're aware that Disney is terrible when it comes to queer representation, there is one thing that I do want to give them credit, although admittedly it's like minuscule credit, and that is in regards to one character that I am so thankful they didn't make queer. And in this case, that is Elsa from Frozen. Now, people may be surprised that I've said this because Elsa, she was trending on social media of give Elsa a girlfriend. And admittedly, I was one of those people who agreed initially. It is only a couple of years later, now that I've kind of thought about it a little bit more and recognised queer coding, well, more so the queer coding within her character and what it represents, that I've realised that it's definitely a good thing that she wasn't made canonically queer, due to the fact of the line, conceal, don't feel. Now, conceal, don't feel in the film itself is obviously in regards to her powers, how her feelings are tied so heavily to her ability to use her powers, and this guilt that's put onto her about her accidentally harming Anna and all these sort of things, and her parents basically, emotional abuse in regards to her not being able to accept her powers and separating her from her sister. But everything about conceal, don't feel, everything about her powers is coded queer. And in regards to that, the conceal, don't feel is very heavily shown as hide away the gay. Now, this is something that lots of queer people experience, of trying to conceal their queer identity in basically trying to act as heteronormative as possible. I know I myself did this when I realised that I was quote unquote different. I don't know why I say quote unquote when I did this, but I desperately tried to hide by being as straight as possible. You wouldn't think it now, like I'm literally wearing a shirt that shows just how gay I am, but there is something about the conceal, don't feel that gave this sense of having to hide and desperately having to hide. Even this whole separating her from her sister even gives further implications of the danger of the queer person. Add in the fact that the conceal, don't feel, and everything that she is made, that Elsa is made to feel, is very much tied into what queer people are made to feel as well. Now, this is something you should hide. This is something that is wrong. This is something that is unnatural. And just her having to separate herself from her sister, her having to not use her powers, this message that is drilled into her by her parents, and even the fact that clearly a backup plan was put in if her powers / her queerness were ever revealed, there was somehow set up to lock her away. And I have a whole video about how Elsa's parents are the real villains, and I will colour that up here. But it's things like that that make me so glad that Disney did not make Elsa a queer character, because everything that I've just described is queer trauma. Everything that is coded with Elsa is the trauma that queer people can face, of being forced to hide who they are, of this overhanging threat of being dangerous, and that something is put in place to protect those who are normal from those who are abnormal, by literally creating somewhere to lock her away. Now, technically I could be going a bit too far with this, because yes, there isn't necessarily a whole thing about this of everything that's happening to Elsa being queer trauma, but this whole conceal, don't feel, the fact that there is fear built up around Elsa, the fact that she is forced to isolate, she is shown to be different, and her differences are made to be villainous in the eyes of her parents, which she then internalizes herself, is very much something that would be something traumatic that queer people, particularly queer youth, for example, do experience. Which is why I'm glad they didn't canonically make Elsa queer, because that would make everything that was queer coded about her very literally a metaphorical queer trauma. Everything about Elsa is trauma. by adding in this extra element, not even adding in, just basically confirmation of these queer coding by having it also be that she is queer, just adds to that level of making everything that she's going through not only trauma through being perceived as abnormal, but also trauma in the fact that she is queer. I don't know if anything that I've just said here makes sense, but it's one of the reasons why I'm glad that Elsa isn't a queer character, because I want the first queer character to be someone who doesn't experience the trauma of identity and this trauma of being seen as abnormal. For example, Raya and even Nimari. There is something about them that is queer coded, but their queer coding is not shown in a traumatic light. And trust me, I'm going to be doing a video about Raya and the Last Dragon in regards to queer coding. But that is a perfect example of queer coding done without it shown in a traumatic light. And I think that's just something that if Elsa was going to be a queer character, that trauma side of conceal don't feel would have to not be there for me to be comfortable with that, because I would rather not have the first Disney princess or first Disney film character who is queer have this whole trauma situation of hiding an identity be part of their storyline, because as queer people face enough trauma as is. We don't want our first Disney princess like character to have those attributes as well. I don't know. I don't know where this video has gone. It's ended up becoming a little bit more emotional than I expected it to be. But what do you think about this video, and what do you think about my thoughts? Whatever the case, let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, as well as any other characters from Disney or other franchises that you would like me to discuss in regards to this queer coding. I'm happy to do it. So yeah, thank you all so much for tuning into this video. I hope it was interesting, even if I do realise that I kind of rambled a little bit here and there. Whatever the case, check out the description box for all of my social media links, my merchandise store, where you can get that Be Queer and Sight Fear merchandise, because it's the more inclusive version of Be Gay Do Crimes. But you can also check out my Patreon, where if you want to support me, that is the place to do so. Can't support me financially, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, drop a thumbs up, comment as well in general, share with your friends for the algorithm's sake, and yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you gays next time.